foggy forest trail. In the small, forgotten town of Raven Creek, where time itself seemed to have stopped, there existed a legend. A story so chilling that it had become little more than a whisper, passed down through generations. It was said that once you crossed the fog-covered bridge deep in the forest, you might never return. Many believed it was just a myth, but for those who knew better, the forest was not to be trifled with. Our story begins with three friends, Emily, Jake, and Sarah, who, against all warnings, ventured into the depths of Raven Creek to uncover the truth behind the mysterious disappearances. They had heard rumors of an old cabin hidden away where strange things happened, a place where the boundaries between this world and something far darker blurred. As they approached the dilapidated cabin, the air grew thick with tension. The windows were shattered and the door hung loosely on its hinges. Emily, the most curious of the group, stepped forward, her heart pounding as she reached for the door. A gust of cold wind rushed past, pushing it open with a loud creak. Inside, the walls were covered in strange, cryptic symbols, drawn hastily in what appeared to be dried mud. Or was it blood? A strange sense of dread crept over them. Jake, trying to ease the tension, made a joke, but his voice sounded hollow in the oppressive silence. Sarah, already uneasy, insisted they leave. But Emily was determined. "We came to find answers," she said, "and we're not leaving until we know the truth." Nightfall came quicker than expected, and with it, an unnatural darkness. They reached the creek, its once clear waters now murky and black. The moonlight reflected off the surface, casting long shadows of the twisted branches overhead. As they stood at the water's edge, a low, haunting sound echoed through the trees. It was a whisper, a name, carried on the wind. Emily. Emily froze, her eyes widening. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jake shrugged it off, saying it must have been the wind, but Sarah was pale. She had heard it too, and the sound chilled her to the bone. They quickly moved away from the creek, their footsteps growing faster as the whispers continued, just out of reach. Further into the forest, they stumbled upon a rusted iron gate, hidden beneath thick vines. Behind it lay an overgrown graveyard, the gravestones weathered and cracked. As they pushed through the gate, Sarah gasped. There at the center of the cemetery stood a decaying mausoleum. Its stone entrance was sealed with a massive iron door, but there were scratches all over it, deep, desperate scratches, as if something had tried to get in or out. Without warning, the ground beneath them shifted, and Sarah stumbled, landing hard on one of the graves. The cold stone beneath her cracked open slightly, revealing something beneath the dirt, something not meant to be seen. A soft, eerie light began to glow from the fissure, and a cold, unnatural wind began to stir the air around them. Panicked, they ran deeper into the forest, stumbling upon an old, forgotten church. The wooden door was barely hanging on its hinges, the interior overtaken by moss and vines. The air inside was thick with decay, the walls crumbling. A single, long-forgotten bell hung above them, and as they entered, it began to toll, despite the absence of wind or movement. Inside, they found rows of broken pews and an altar that had long since decayed. But it wasn't the church itself that terrified them. It was the shadow, a dark, twisted figure barely visible in the dim light, standing in the far corner. It didn't move, but they felt its eyes on them, watching, waiting. Desperate to escape, they fled from the church, only to find themselves at the entrance of a collapsed tunnel, its mouth yawning open like a hungry beast. The tunnel led into the heart of the mountain, a place where the light of the moon couldn't reach. But as they stood there, frozen with indecision, they heard the whispers again. Closer this time, surrounding them. They had no choice. With no other path in sight, they ventured into the tunnel. The darkness swallowed them whole. Inside, the air was frigid, and their footsteps echoed ominously off the stone walls. Emily led the way, clutching a small flashlight that barely pierced the thick blackness. The whispers followed them into the depths, growing louder, more insistent. At the tunnel's end, they found themselves standing before a ruined stone bridge, suspended over a ravine so deep that the bottom was lost in shadow. The bridge, though old and crumbling, was the only way across. They inched forward, their fear palpable as they stepped onto the weathered stone. Beneath them, the creaking of ancient supports groaned, and the wind howled through the canyon. Halfway across, Emily stopped. She felt it first, a strange sensation like something was pulling her backward. She turned to her friends, panic flashing in her eyes. "Something's here," she whispered. "Something's following us." And then, without warning, the bridge collapsed. They tumbled down into the ravine, landing in a swamp at the bottom. The water was shallow, but thick with mud and reeds. As they struggled to their feet, a figure appeared in the mist. A woman, dressed in tattered, muddy clothes, her face obscured by the shadows. She raised her arm, pointing toward Emily. Her voice was cold, empty. "You shouldn't have come here." Before they could react, the figure disappeared into the mist. And then, so did Emily. Jake and Sarah screamed her name, but the mist swallowed their voices. They searched frantically, but it was as if she had never been there. The whispers grew louder, circling them, mocking them. And in the distance, they saw the woman again, this time holding Emily's flashlight. Jake and Sarah fled, but they never spoke of that night again. Emily was never found, and the town of Raven Creek fell into deeper silence, as though the forest had claimed yet another victim. No one dared go back to the creek. No one dared to investigate the disappearance. But if you listen closely, on a quiet night, you can still hear her name whispered on the wind. Emily. If you enjoy the video and want more creepy stories, please hit like, share, and subscribe to my channel. It means a lot to me. That's all for today. Thank you, and have a nice day.